Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys for another show, for another episode of our Raw Reaction series. And as always, our Arsenal transfer show at 8 a.m. every single day, every single morning, no matter where I am, even if I'm away once again, today in Oxford. And the other half is sitting right over there, but she's trying to be really awkward. She's looking at me weirdly. But we're going to push through the awkwardness, and I hope you appreciate the fact that we're continuing doing these shows despite being away. 90 episodes in a row. So drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you're new around here with those notifications turned on. If you obviously do not want to miss any of those, you can help support the channel, of course, by helping out by joining as a member as well. You get access to loads of different stuff, as well as our Discord server too. And you can also help out the show by helping us in the Football Content Awards and voting for us in the FCAs by tweeting out, I am voting for at the Gooner Talk TV in at the _FCAs for #BestClubCreator. So, yeah, and if you haven't got Twitter, you can go into the description in the video and vote there as well. Let's push on to the news. But before we do, yesterday, we did publish a exclusive interview with Dominic Szoboszlai. So if you'd like to go and read, that link is in the description over at 101 Great Goals. Really interesting interview. And I know that a lot of you guys know how much this would have meant to me. So I appreciate all the kind words and comments that you left on the post yesterday, and all the tweets as well. But if you haven't checked it out already, please make sure you go and do that. But let's go on to the first main bit of news today, talking about Reiss Nelson, who's been linked to a move to Crystal Palace, of course, managed by Patrick Vieira. The French coach has only taken over, but he's actually done quite a bit of business with Michael Elise coming in. They've already got in Eberechi Eze from QPR last season, and they're building quite a young squad. So Nelson would fit into that quite well. And you've got the fact that he's a little bit unknown right now in kind of the world of the Premier League football. He's not played too much, but he could be getting a good loan this summer, and Crystal Palace might be that club. So Patrick Vieira getting in another top quality talent in at Crystal Palace this summer. Hector Bellerin was linked with a move away from Arsenal and still is, with Inter Milan definitely interested, linking him, of course, with that possible swap deal with Lautaro Martinez. But specifically regarding Bellerin, a lot of you had a bit of a breakdown yesterday because The Guardian did report that Arsenal were interested in possibly negotiating a new deal alongside Granit Xhaka. That doesn't seem like it would be the most likely outcome, certainly not as likely as it would be for Granit Xhaka to sign a new deal. But Hector Bellerin could still stay at the club if Arsenal's demands aren't seemingly met, although there is reports that hopefully, anyway, that they have seemingly lowered their expectations from Inter, and Bellerin could also end up then at the Italian club this summer. Going on to Joe Willock, and Newcastle and Steve Bruce have said that Joe Willock will have to make a decision on his future very soon. They are setting Arsenal that deadline of effectively 48 hours, because if you think about it, there's less than 2 weeks now until the start of the Premier League season. He'd have to get into pre-season, integrate into training, and of course try and assimilate into that group as quickly as possible. And you don't want to have that happen a few days before the start of the season. So they have set a deadline. If they can't get Joe Willock in within the next kind of few hours or so, it will mean that they will try and move for other alternative targets. So there you go. Let's move on to the next one, which is Granit Xhaka. He has, and I'm sure you've seen, joined back in training with the group, despite it all looking like he would end up at Roma this summer. I know a lot of you have had opinions on this, and we did a show specifically with Lee Judges on Friday about this and trying to break down why it's happened and if it's a good thing for Arsenal or if it's not. But a lot of you have got opinions on this. So if you have got any thoughts, please do leave them in the comment section below. I'll try to respond to as many of them as I feasibly can. But he is now back in training with the group. And yeah, looks absolutely happy and fine, like nothing's happened. The video of the training session that came out yesterday looked as if nothing had happened, that he wasn't being linked with the move away from the club. And if he does stay, of course, we've still got a very decent midfielder in the group. But I think we could all agree if we had the opportunity to upgrade upon him, we would certainly take that opportunity. Now we move on to the possible ins that we could see this summer, starting with Martin Odegaard. The Norwegian midfielder has been linked with us for quite some time now, and it is, as we've kind of used the analogy of Newton's cradle, of it going back and forth constantly in regards to whether he's going to be coming, whether he's going to be staying at Real Madrid. And reports from Spain suggested yesterday that Arsenal aren't actually the only ones interested in Odegaard, and that Chelsea and Liverpool also hold an interest in him. However, his future in Spain looks very much like it could end this summer, seemingly, with the latest report saying that he is not particularly happy with his situation and that a move to Arsenal would certainly interest him, basically based on the fact that he enjoyed it so much when he was here during those last 6 months at the end of last season. I still think that of all of the attacking midfielders that we're linked to, he would be the most likely to join, say over like a Maddison or a Kamada or a Sabitzer. He does seem like the one that Arsenal want more than any other. I'm not saying that Maddison wouldn't necessarily happen, but it does seem like Odegaard would be the most likely choice of all of those. Bruno Guimaraes is the second to last story of the day, and an interesting one that reports have said that Arsenal are indeed preparing a bid for the Brazilian midfielder who is currently away with the Brazilian squads at the Olympics this summer. But a £25.6 million bid, aka 30 million euros, is expected to be submitted to Lyon. However, Jean-Michel Aulas, the Lyon president, is expecting much greater than 30 million euros, closer to 40. So it may take a couple of opportunities for Arsenal to finally agree a deal. Arsenal won't be the only team interested in him if he is indeed available, because he is that quality of a player. But if Arsenal can indeed get a deal done for Bruno Guimaraes, it would certainly provide an upgrade upon what we've already got and an excellent partner in that midfield. So he certainly would be my pick for the central midfielder. It doesn't mean that we're going to get him, but he's the one that I certainly want. But I know a lot of you have asked for kind of other midfielders, Yves Bissouma being the big one. But Bruno Guimaraes would certainly be a top-class signing if Arsenal were indeed to get the deal done. And going on finally to Lautaro Martinez, probably the biggest story of the day. 23-year-old Argentinian striker at Inter Milan, 77 million euros is what the club want to bring him in, which is around just under 70 million pounds, of course. If Arsenal were able to get Lautaro Martinez in this summer, it probably would be one of the top three moves. And I put it up there with the likes of Jack Grealish and that move into Manchester City. It would be a massive deal if Arsenal were able to get this one in, because he is exceptionally highly rated. And no one really expected Arsenal to go in with a bid quite this high for a forward, especially considering their needs in midfield. But Atletico Madrid have joined the party of teams that want to take him from Inter Milan this summer because of his seemingly increasing availability. The Athletic reported that a deal would be, as they put it, simple to do, which is quite surprising considering how expensive he is, and that they did really credit Arsenal's interest as very genuine in the striker through the negotiations for Hector Bellerin to move in the opposite direction. That is something that Arsenal certainly have, is they have Hector Bellerin as an offering to them in part exchange for Lautaro Martinez, and that could put them ahead of teams like Atletico Madrid, any possible negotiations that go on there. However, there were reports that Martinez does prefer a move to Spain over England or to stay in Italy. So that's certainly something that could take place. Atletico Madrid, like Arsenal, would certainly need to move players on. They have players that they could move on. Saul is expected to leave this summer for a figure around £50 million. So that would certainly help them with any move for Martinez. And they've got other players like Kieran Trippier that are wanted by Manchester United. So they could make a lot of money, and that would then lead them into being a much better and more capable club to go for Martinez this summer. But that is all of the news, meaning that we do move on to the second part of the show. And of course, your questions in the chat box. So if you have any, please do throw them in there now. We'll try and go through as many as we can in the next 10 minutes or so. Let's scroll up the chat and go to Scott, who says, Tom, we need a captain moving forwards, and the new central midfielder needs to be part of this. If not, who? And if we do lose Granit Xhaka, Scott, it does obviously mean you're losing quite a big leader in that midfield. Is Bruno Guimaraes a leader in that midfield for Lyon? He is with his performances, but I wouldn't be so sure in regards to vocally. I'm not sure how good his English-speaking skills are and whether that would impact how good of a leader he might be on the pitch for Arsenal. But Gabriel, of course, who moved from Lille, a Portuguese speaker being Brazilian himself, you've got those links there with possible players coming in. And you know that it can be learned fairly quickly if they're taking lessons every single day. And we've seen players coming from abroad and learn the language very fast. So there's nothing to say that Bruno couldn't come in and be more of a leader and improve in that aspect of his game the longer that he was to stay with Arsenal. Vignesh says, hi, Tom. It's pretty obvious that we're going to break the bank for Lautaro. Do you think we could have taken a look at Victor Osimhen, the Nigerian Napoli striker playing in Italy, left Lille, thanks to Luis Campos and his recruitment tactics, bringing in some really young players and selling them on for big fees? I don't really know how well he's done, to be honest, since going to Napoli. I haven't really followed his career since he's left France. I think he's scored a fair few goals, but he's not one that I would have really looked at to kind of bring in this summer. I think he certainly needs another year at the top level before kind of, legitimizing his place as one of the elite strikers in Europe. But you'll have to let me know, Vignesh, what your thoughts are on him, because I'm not that clued up on how he's done since he's moved to Napoli. And I think that someone like Lautaro Martinez would be a better option. You also have to factor in that Osimhen moved to Napoli for a massive fee. And after just 1 year, they would also want another big fee and a profit to take him to Arsenal. So that's certainly something that you would need to consider. She's King says Maddison was out because he became a dad. Yes, a lot of rumours went around yesterday that the reason why Maddison wasn't in training was because he was making a move to Arsenal. It isn't. It's because his wife has gone into labour and so he's having a kid. So you don't need to be concerned about kind of pulling different strings. That's the reason why he wasn't in training. So I wouldn't read any kind of news into that whatsoever. 1994 Gunner says, is there any news on a backup keeper? It's interesting that we haven't seen any of these kind of links resurface regarding Aaron Ramsdale. Arsenal were expected to go in with a third bid of around £26 million, 18 million plus 8 in add-ons, but there's been no news of that either being made or accepted or rejected. It's gone very quiet on the kind of backup goalkeeping front. To me, what I've kind of found throughout the window is that it's very analog, I suppose, in the way that we're going after targets. It's one after the other. It doesn't look like there's much simultaneous transfer business going on. So when one kind of line goes quiet, the Martinez thing comes up. When that goes a little bit quiet, we've seen the Guimaraes stuff come up. So it's either one or two at a time. And maybe because we're putting a lot of effort right now into sorting out the futures of Granit Xhaka, Bellerin, and trying to bring in the likes of Martinez and maybe Guimaraes, that the backup keeper link's gone a little bit quiet for the moment. But we obviously don't know everything that's going on behind the scenes, and there could be some moves being made. But there's been no news ever since that kind of expected bid of £26 million has gone in, and whether that's been accepted or even made. So we'll have to hold that line and follow that story in the coming days or so. Zaran says, morning, Tom. There's information on Lacazette possibly leaving. The only interest that we've seen from any other club or links to any other club have been Atletico Madrid. And if Atletico Madrid are interested in Lautaro Martinez, it would be pretty counterproductive of them to go and help Arsenal out by signing their striker if they want the other striker in Italy. So maybe that's why it's gone a little quiet on the Lacazette front. If Arsenal are wanting a 23-year-old forward, it would make sense for them to want to move on one of Lacazette or Aubameyang this summer. It makes sense that Lacazette would be the one, considering he's only got 1 year left on his contract, just turned 30 years of age. And still holds a little bit of value, which could be used to help them with any move for Martinez. But there's been no specific rumours about Lacazette and a club and a possible deal getting any closer in the next few days or so. The Rohan family says, Tom, do you think we are all too pessimistic about Arsenal's prospects in the new season? We are only 6 points off of fourth position. Turning 2 losses into wins is what we need. It sounds so simple. Just turn 2 losses into wins and you've got yourself into the top 4. Obviously, we finished 8th. So whilst we were 6 points off the top 4, there were still 3 teams ahead of us, which led us to missing out on the position that we wanted to be in. And it's going to be the same situation for us next season. There's so many big clubs and improving clubs that we've got to find ourselves competing with next year to get into that top 4 position. And you've also got to factor in that all of those teams around us are improving. Manchester City, we're nowhere near, are going to be bringing in what looks like Jack Grealish and maybe Harry Kane. Chelsea could be getting Erling Haaland and are also looking like they're going to be getting in Jules Kounde. Spurs, whilst they may lose Harry Kane, although my kind of expectation would be that they won't. I think they'll end up keeping hold of him. But they're making some good moves for players as well. Brian Gil coming in from Spain is a very good move. Aston Villa, who of course tried to sign Emile Smith-Rowe from us, is signing Leon Bailey as a replacement for Grealish, who is a good replacement. I don't think he's anywhere close to the kind of level, but he's a good replacement for Grealish. They've already brought in Emi Buendia as well. So there's loads of improvement going on around us. So it's just not as simple, Rohan, as saying, let's just turn 2 losses into 2 wins and all of a sudden we're in the top 4, because you need to be able to compete in line with those opponents, and that's going to be really tricky. Let's scroll down a little bit more and get some of your more recent questions. Harish says, Tom, are we really looking to address our priorities? If we are looking to spend 70 million, shouldn't we go for more of a Nicolo Barella rather than a Lautaro Martinez? I see your point of view. It didn't appear to me at the start of the window that a striker would be kind of Arsenal's priority to be spending that amount of money. What I would say on why we might be interested in a striker is because of the uncertainty around both our forwards, with Aubameyang having 2 years left and now 32 years of age, Lacazette having 1 year left, and then there's a big gap from Lacazette down to following Bellerin. So that's certainly one that we need to fill that gap with a player of a certain age in between them. Some might say 23 is too young, and maybe that's kind of blocking the path of following Balogun. But what I would say is personally that if you can go and get a striker of his quality and it's available, and there's no one else really in for him, it's probably worth going and doing, because he would really improve what we've got and would be built for the long-term future of the club. So that's certainly one that I think we should be looking to do. Konstantin says, Tom, what do you think about Vlahovic? Isn't he a goal machine? And what about Icardi as a loan option? On the Icardi thing, not too keen. I don't think he's done too well since going to PSG, and he's suffered with quite a lot of injuries as well. On Vlahovic, though, obviously Fiorentina striker, scored a bucket load of goals last season in Serie A, and the other day in a pre-season's friendly, he scored 7 goals in a single game. So he is a very good forward, Serbian international. I don't think Arsenal are in for him. The clubs that have been linked with him have been the likes of Juventus and Spurs. Spurs looking at him as a possible Harry Kane replacement if he leaves. Obviously, he's a great forward, lots of potential, but I just don't think Arsenal are in for him. If it was between him and Lautaro Martinez, I think I'd choose Martinez because I like more of his link. Very unselfish player, and I think Arsenal need that in a forward as well. So I would lean towards the more of the Argentinian. But I like Vlahovic, and I'm going to be interested to watch where his next move is and how he develops over the next few years or so. Ali says, if you could get 2 of Bruno Guimaraes, Odegaard, and Lautaro Martinez, but not all 3, who would you sacrifice? Oh, it's a good question, isn't it? I think I'd lean. If you're saying that there's no price on these guys, and I can just pick who I want out of the 3, I think I would choose Guimaraes and Martinez. I think that we could be okay with Emile Smith-Rowe there, and with the likes of Xhaka that can play at 10. You've got other players that could play there as well. And I think the opportunity to bring in Martinez is just too great of an option. If it was a case of Bruno Guimaraes and Odegaard or Martinez, then I'd choose Bruno Guimaraes and Odegaard, because I think that midfield is just so key. But the chance to get Martinez is just so good, as well as Guimaraes, and those 2 are just kind of one in a 5-year option of a transfer window. And I just think if Arsenal can get those 2, it would be excellent for the future. And also we've got January coming up, and we could address maybe that attacking midfield role once again. It's not like last season where we had no one. You've still got Emile Smith-Rowe. You've also got Joe Willock as well. You've got to think about there as well. So he could, be kept and maybe used as a backup option at number 10. Or you could switch to a 4-3-3 and not use a 10 whatsoever, or go to the 3-4-3 formation. So I think I would go for Guimaraes and Martinez out of the 3. But if it was a case of Guimaraes and Odegaard or Martinez, I'd go for the 2 over that one. Martin says, if Martinez comes in, would you play 2 up top? I don't necessarily think you need to. I know that there's a lot of kind of theories about the fact that Martinez can only play in a 2, because that's what he did at Inter Milan with Romelu Lukaku. But for the Copa America, for Argentina, he played as a single striker, and they went on and won the competition. So he certainly can play that position on his own. I think he would bring in the wide areas really well as well. So I think there's scope for him to play as a single striker. I think it means that you could play someone like Pepe, say, really close to him and slightly off him, rather than Pepe being forced out really far wide. So I think there's scope that you could play Pepe quite close to Martinez without necessarily being an out-and-out second striker. We'll go for a couple more of your questions before we wrap things up. Sartvik says, possibility of us getting an out-and-out goalkeeper like we did with Ryan last year. I don't know if we'll get a kind of a random one sign. It was pretty much like a 1 in a million that Ryan was announced without anyone knowing anything. So I very much, and especially in the January window, it's very different to the summer window. Everyone's very clued up what's going on, because of course in January the games are still happening. So I'd be surprised if Arsenal signs someone out of the blue, but we've been shown that it can happen without any prior warning. So, and it was great to see that there was reports without kind of any news coming out prior to that we were able to sign someone. So yeah, I'd love if it was to happen, but I'd highly doubt in the summer window they're able to pull that off. But you never know. No Sleep says, where is all of this money coming from? Have a nasty feeling that what we have to spend will take the Cronkies getting a loaning and adding to the debt of the club already. It's probably my view as well that a loan is being involved. We already know that a loan was taken out to refinance the pandemic loan that we took out back in January of about 120-something million pounds. So I expect that a loan has probably happened. I also think the club are expecting to make quite a lot of sales that haven't quite happened yet. We obviously have moved on a few players, but we haven't been able to move on any of our big kind of assets like Xhaka, Bellerin, Torreira, Lacazette. We haven't been able to do any of those so far. So that could yet change. But I agree, no sleep, in the fact that, yeah, it's probably going to be a loan involved in this. And in which case, it's not my money. And I'd love to see Arsenal go and spend well and improve the squad. But it is always going to be in the back of your mind, isn't it, that debt's there. Knowing that you've got debt with a multi-billion-dollar owner makes you feel a little bit better. But knowing how he doesn't invest in the team and in the club, maybe that's a bit of a problem that we've got. But yeah, I kind of agree that it probably is a loan that's involved in that as well. Kiki says, congrats on the article, Tom. Next up, yeah, maybe. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. And yeah, hopefully some more news for you guys, some exciting stuff coming up over the next week or so to tell you about. So following on from that Zoboslai exclusive interview, which if you've joined us late and you weren't aware that was happening, go check the link in the description and give it a read. So there you go. Last question then from SJ says, do you think Willock and Ainsley Maitland-Niles will leave this summer? I think that Maitland-Niles will probably end up leaving. Joe Willock is still very much in the air. I just don't know how Arteta feels about him, to be honest, whether or not he wants him to stay, whether or not he can see him being as part of that team, or if he's just a surplus player. And also, you've got to think about what Joe Willock wants. Does he actually want to move away? Does he want to go back to Newcastle? So I think Maitland-Niles will go. Willock, I'm just not sure on, to be honest. Constantine, sorry, but there won't be a stream after today's game against Chelsea, as I said, and as you can probably see from my background, I'm not at home. I'm currently away and won't be able to watch the Arsenal-Chelsea game. But we'll be discussing it when we return, definitely. I've got a couple of shows lined up with some great guests next week for you guys. So make sure you subscribe to get all of that content. But I hope you have a fantastic weekend, guys. And I'll see you tomorrow morning once again for the 8 a.m. update show. It's been a pleasure as always. And as always, up the Arsenal.